So before we get into the full-on consultation or anything, I just like to remind everybody that we do record our consultations just so that way you can view them back in case you need any information from them. But that's all already on the form, just like to remind you.
Perfect.
Okay, so why don't we get started with who we're here to talk about today, what you're trying to work on with your dog, and maybe the problem areas and different goals you're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. So our dog is named Ozzie. He is a male Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. He's 6 years
Okay.
old. We adopted him when he was one from a rescue. And I'll give you just a little brief history on him, and then I'll tell you what we're trying to work on. So when we
Mm-hmm.
adopted him, he was one. He was not kind of half potty trained, really, anxious and fearful. He bonded to us pretty quickly, but it was kind of sad. He would just, you could tell he like wanted people like to kind of interact, but then someone would go to pet him and he'd kind of shudder. So anyways, we
Mm-hmm.
got him on like Prozac 10 milligrams after maybe just a few weeks, and that like helped tremendously. It's like it like
Mm-hmm.
broke down that kind of barrier, and he was able to yeah, just really kind of grow from there and be much more interactive. We did some just like kind of basic obedience training, and I did some stuff with him at home, like taught him how to do high five and spin. He's just a really sweet, loving,
Mm-hmm.
smart dog. And I would say for like the next couple of years, everything was kind of, fine. He came out of his shell more. He would bark at the TV, like at dogs or at like a horse. It's kind of a quirky behavior, but where we were,
Okay.
excuse me, living, we didn't really have people over too much, and everything kind of was fine. Then
Mhm,
we had our my son about 3 years ago, and that's definitely when just some kind of it really felt like I mean, he's very good with my son, but like it's like he had a job to do. And even though he's a
mhm.
cavalier, it was like all of a sudden he was like this guard dog kind of. So
Okay.
it was so a few things have kind of happened since. And then I'd say it's now getting to the point where like, okay, this, he's in a different phase of his life. We need to kind of get him, some training and so the main things are now when people come over, so it's kind of transition. So like, people coming over or us leaving, meal times,
Mhm,
those are kind of the big ones. So, we and I noticed with my son, like, we kind of joke, I'm like, gosh, the dog needs a vacation. Like he thinks he's kind of this in some ways it's good, right? Like when my son started walking, if he went over to like the stairs or the door, he would bark, right?
mhm.
And which is great, but even sometimes when we're having like a lot of fun and get kind of amped up, he barks, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm the mom, like we're okay, and I try to kind of, tell him like I got this, but then, when people come, we have people a lot more come over now. So like when someone comes over, sorry,
Hello?
I guess it kicked out. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, everything's good now.
Okay. Um, was I, where did I leave off?
You were saying that when you guys are, like, the energy gets higher in the house if you guys are, like, playing or whatever, and then
Yeah.
he starts barking.
Yep, definitely. And then I would say the other thing is, we have people coming over a lot more now, and like every morning,
Mhm,
with like the childcare coming over, and so he definitely like is triggered by like those transitions, people coming over, and I know we're not handling it right. I mean, we're not not making him sit, or I do find
mhm,
we found these new bones actually that the vet recommended, and that has helped a little bit with like triggering moments, giving him something to
mhm,
do. But definitely people coming over, and then mealtime. So like, he was never really like food like anxious or aggressive before. Our
mhm,
food really wasn't a thing. But I don't know if it's age or again just kind of like with my son being in the high chair. Uh, you know, when he was younger, it was like the dog knew he was gonna get crumbs or like food all the
mhm,
time, like so I think he got used to that, and now food doesn't drop off the high chair, he like barks for it. um
mm,
and with my son, I think he knows my son is an easy target, right? Like he knows if
mhm.
he has something in his hand, he can kind of get it, come after it. So he's not like it's it's not like he's yeah, there's like a little different side of him with food. Like it's actually if he's
Hmm.
eating, you can go up to him and like you know, touch him. He's not like, aggressive like that. But like if there's
Hmm.
food in sight now, he's like you can see anxious about it where he's like, I'm gonna get that food.
Hmm.
He's not so much like that with my husband and I, because I think he knows like I don't know, he can't get it as easily. But do you know what I mean? He's just kind of like, now if my son has like a pretzels, right, that we put on the table, like he's going to
Hmm.
try to find a way to get those pretzels. So we have to like remove them a lot during snack time or like meal time with my son.
Hmm.
Um, and then I would say the other thing is, yeah, just he barks at the TV, which is like kind of quirky, kind of cute at first, but actually
Hmm.
kind of annoying sometimes. Right
Yeah.
now I feel like it's like we can't really watch TV as much. And I would say those are the main things.
Okay. Um, Sounds good. Thank you for all the information. Um, so I'll just go over a little bit of what these different behaviors are and like their reasoning for like how we would address certain things, and
Hmm.
then I'll get into more of like the type of training that we do and everything like that.
Great.
So uh right off the bat, when you guys brought him home, um what did that look like as far as did he go in a kennel right away? Does he sleep in like the same bed as you guys? Like what was his transition into your home when you first got him?
Good question. We tried to crate chain, and like after like just like the first night, he was whining,
Hmm.
whatever. He slept in our bed pretty much from the first day. He does
Okay.
have a crate that he's, happy with. And like when we leave the house, we put him in a crate. Um,
Hmm.
and he's, comfortable in that. But for sleeping, he definitely sleeps with us every night.
Okay. And then when you guys do leave the house, he doesn't have any issues like being home like alone in the crate and everything, right?
No, and like um, you know, he no, he definitely does.
Okay. Um, so just right off the bat, obviously you guys give him medication for the nervousness, so he's obviously has a little bit of a nervous side to him. As far as like how you said when you brought him home, he's a little whiny, a little unsure of things. Um, that is just like it works the same way with humans. If like, somebody has anxiety, they just have anxiety, and you try to work like through it and get over it. But sometimes dogs just have these certain things. Um, with him coming home and then sleeping with you guys right away, right off the bat, that's kind of something that it's we're past it now, but I'll just go over like the kind of from start to where we're at now. But we would probably not recommend like for the dog to get that much freedom right away because within the first month, they're trying to learn how they kind of fit into your family and everything. So what we would always recommend is just that first month or two having a lot of restrictions on the dog, being very strict with the dog. So that way they look at being outside the crate, doing all this stuff with the family more of as a privilege, and they don't start to get this expectation of certain things, like with sleeping in the bed. So now he's like whining. If he doesn't get to sleep in the bed, he just won't sleep. So that little bit of structure, I would say, can make a big difference in the long run as far as him kind of like doing whatever he wants around the house sometimes with the barking and the guarding and kind of deciding what he's going to do. And then it can bleed over into the
Hmm.
meal stuff as well. Just because, like you said, when your son was smaller and like food would fall, he would just be getting it, and there was like no kind of structure to it. And then now, since he was doing it for so long, he's like, well, I want my food that's normally falling. So he's going to do whatever he thinks he needs to do to get that food. And that's not really abnormal from the way that he's kind of like learned how to go about things. But it's definitely something that we would want to address just because we don't really want the dog expecting those kinds of things where they're just going to bark or they're going to jump on the table or bother people for food. Um, we would
Mhm.
want a little bit better manners from the dog. Um, and then as far as the guarding and everything like that, that could also partly come from a few things. It could be just the fact that, he got a lot of freedom right away, so he feels like he has like a stronger role in the family as far as like, what's this guy doing? I want to see what's going on over here. The like, hey, the little kid's over by the stairs. I want to see what's going on over here. So he's kind of has a little bit more of like a dominating presence in the house, which he said is like not a bad thing, and I wouldn't necessarily view it as like a bad thing either. But that is something that for him, we don't want him like in charge of that because, at the end of the day, he's just a dog and he doesn't necessarily know how to like balance himself with other people and stuff. So we kind of have to let him know, like, hey, this is too much, or like, hey, we don't want you doing this, or you can bark at the door, but now you're being too much. So that's something we would also try and dial back. Um, for the meals, with like anything having to do with like resource guarding or like there's certain food that he wants to get and he doesn't want anybody else to have it or something, that's a normal behavior for dogs. It's just like a survival instinct. If they were out in the wild doing their thing, they have to make sure that they have food for themselves. So it's not something out of the ordinary or crazy for a dog to have their meal and be a little defensive over it. But at the same time, we want to be able to make it clear to them that we're not going to, bother you. We're not going to take your food. We're not going to do anything like to negatively affect you. So you shouldn't be exhibiting these defensive behaviors with us. Um, that's kind of what we would be asking for in that situation from him,
Yeah,
because
and just real quick with that, so just to clarify too,
yeah,
he doesn't really guard his food, he just
hmm
wants our food. Yeah,
okay, yeah, then that would be more on just like the discipline side of things, as far as like
yeah,
you respect your boundaries and everything.
yeah.
Um, and then everything with the people coming inside and outside of the house, and when there's a lot more energy in the house and all that stuff where the barking occurs, like at the TV and all that. So for dogs, having like a high energy, or if another dog has a high energy, dogs see that as instability. So when people are coming in and out,
Mhm.
there's probably a higher energy just because it's like somebody comes in, you're greeting them, you're like, hi, or like they're leaving, everybody's saying bye, hugging, or if you guys are playing, there's a lot of energy there. If something's happening on the TV, it's loud, it's like fast, maybe it's getting his attention. That is
Mhm.
something where he's getting amped up with whatever's happening. So as the
Mhm.
energy is going up in the room, he's kind of getting over energetic, and then he's starting to bark as a way to like redirect that energy. Like that's how he's kind of expressing it. Um,
Mhm.
for that, it's a pretty straightforward fix once we get into the training and everything. But it'd basically be the idea of letting him know that you can relax. Like you don't there's nothing to bark at, there's nothing happening.
Yeah.
Like there's a little bit higher energy, but you still need to like have a little bit of self-control.
Yep.
Um, so all of that would fall under like the same umbrella as far as managing that excitement. He's just getting too
Mhm.
excited, so then he's like, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna bark. And then the bones coming in are like a secondary thing as far as what the bark is doing for him. So instead of barking, he's going towards the bones to like vent that energy and that excitement.
Mhm.
So I would say the the bones might work, but I that's more of a band-aid for the issue.
Yeah.
So he's like, it's stopping him in the moment, but you're not addressing the mindset that he has as far as like dealing with that excitement and everything.
That makes sense.
So we would most likely want to more directly focus on the mindset that he has there. So that way the behavior can be like alleviated long term and more reliably rather than like oh no, I don't have any more bones for him. Now he's going crazy again.
Right.
Um, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can still use the bones, but just keep in mind that it's more of like a in the moment fix, not a long term fix.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Um, and then how is he on his walks? Like if you well, whenever you walk him.
That's a good question, actually. We don't walk him that much because
Mhm,
and we probably should. So we used to have, like, pre-pandemic, pre-kid, we would have someone come walk him,
mhm.
or take him to doggy daycare. Even then, he's kind of like finicky. Like, he likes to hold the leash, which is, I know, not
Okay.
great. It's really cute, but he like
Mhm,
holds the leash in his mouth. And like for like he loves to play ball and whatnot, and he can be good on the leash. I mean, he can be fine where he like holds the leash and he walks down the street and he'll be fine. Like, he's not aggressive with other dogs or whatever. Just sometimes he doesn't want to walk. Like, he's kind of
mhm.
like he wants to go back home. Like, he pulls back
Yeah.
home. Like, if it's the weather, or even sometimes just like getting him past the first block. But then
Mhm,
post pandemic, and like just being home a lot, all of that, we really haven't walked him as much, because usually we're trying to get out and walk my son, and he
mhm.
doesn't walk super well with my son. Again, it's not like he's a jerk, really. He's just like, again, he feels like he instability, like he has this kind of like, he has to walk behind us so he can see us. Like, he
Yeah.
wouldn't walk in front, and he just doesn't seem that happy. Like, it seems like a lot. But now, actually, my cousin will take him, and he's much better. So a lot of it, I think, does have to do with like my son, like feeling like a little protective, or like instability, and maybe we're just out of the habit. But actually, we you know I would like to walk him more, and have some guidance around that too.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that
And I
makes
can walk
sense.
him by myself. Like, I don't have to walk him with the
Mhm.
family. But
Yeah. For that, like the walking behind you and everything and the stopping, I would say that's a lot of his nervousness coming into that,
Mhm.
where he's just unsure. So then he probably looks very panicked. He's like thinking about like, what's this? What's that? What's that? What's going on
Yeah.
over here? And for that, it would just be, once we get into more of the training talk, that's where we would implement our like heal command, where the heal command is very involved for the dog because there's a lot of steps, a lot of rules to it. So the way that we have our heel command structured is that when Ozzie's walking with you, he should be on your left side, right shoulder in line with your left leg the whole time. He shouldn't go past you, behind you, to your side, anything like that. And then when you come to a stop, he should go into an automatic sit next to you. So it's a lot of steps for any dog to keep track of. So usually what'll happen is that that process is so involved that now they have less time to worry about, this squirrel over there or all these leaves falling over here or these people
Mhm.
over here because they're thinking about, I really have to keep an eye on mom because if she stops, I have to sit down. If she speeds up, I got to speed up with her. So
Mhm.
not necessarily saying that that's like going to be the 100% fix. For some dogs, it is. But that's a good way to start implementing some structure to let them know that these extra things that are making you nervous are not important. And the easiest thing to do right now is to just follow along with the command. And then
Mhm.
through doing that and the exposure of walking and, a lot of like positive examples for him as far as like, oh, we went on a walk today. Nothing bad happened. I was just in heel. Oh, we went on a walk
Mhm.
again today. Nothing bad happened. And then now he's getting that reinforcement of like, okay, like walking is not that scary. Nothing's really happening. I go to the park halfway between my walk. I don't like,
Mhm.
what's the big deal? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Um, so that's one thing right away. The walking is super important for building like any structure. Um, so that will be a key part of the command, no matter or of the program you do, no matter which one you do.
Mhm.
So let me make sure I went over everything here. Any other additional behaviors or anything that you think that I should know about, or any like difficulties you've been having with him other than what you said already?
No, and I think this is, definitely a good kind of explanation. I mean, I feel like there was kind of like chapter 1 with Ozzy where, he's actually really timid, and
Hmm.
we didn't have a lot of structure and there was really no issue, and his life was pretty like simple. And
Hmm.
then, kind of throwing in a child, and maybe his anxiety increasing, and kind of just, now I feel like it's actually like he's overconfident and
Hmm.
not, and that lack of structure is really catching up with us. And yeah, I feel like you said, it's certain things kind of about the expectation of food and the instability and stuff is definitely, and it's just like we're at a point where now it's like, okay, I feel like we're kind of failing him. It's like we need to get our
Hmm.
ducks in a row so we can give him what he needs, because you know and Cavaliers are like, as you may know, like, their own kind of, they're just very caring and like almost human like and part of the family,
Hmm.
so it's very easy to just kind of like let no rules. But I think now we're at a point where it's yeah, it's like I said, it's kind of, you know actually hurting him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this. I would say it's the same mentality as it would be with like raising your child. It's just like
Hmm.
you have some structure in place just to keep everything going smoothly, kind of. You're not
Yeah.
necessarily wanting to add in that discipline because you're just like mad at your child or something. You're doing it for a reason. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Um, so I would view it in the same way. And then ideally, we get Ozzy like to a point where you guys have it all sorted out in the house. Everything's nice. You can go on a walk as like a family. That would probably be the goal there because um, it doesn't really. It's not like he's got issues that we're unable to like fix or anything. It's just about adding in that structure, adding in that discipline, and being consistent with it.
Yep.
Um, so Okie dokie. I'll go ahead now into the training and everything like that a little bit more in depth. Um, First, starting off, are you familiar with the concept of like physicality with dogs and like different training tools and everything like that?
Not really. And I mean, I've done, I did the very like simple obedience training with him, and actually did
Hmm.
clicker training for like the tricks kind of. But
Yeah.
that's really kind of, and I mean, I've looked some stuff up, but no, I'm not really familiar with
Okay.
probably what you're referring to.
Yeah. So I'll go over that a little bit just so that way you have a better understanding with all that. Um, the concept of like physicality is what dogs use to communicate. So, for example, they cannot speak obviously like you and I can, so they have to use more physical ways of communication. So you can look it up on YouTube where there's one specific really popular video. There's a bunch of videos, but there's one really popular one where a mother cream retriever goes into a playpen with like 10 of her puppies, and they're all really excited to see her. They're like, "Mom's back, yeah." And they're jumping all over her, and they're like hungry, so they're trying to nip at her a little bit. She starts getting bothered because they're not giving her her space, and she eventually snaps at one of them and does a little correctional bite, and then they all kind of back up and they understand like, okay, mom means business now. So then they sit down, you see them all like relax and chill out, and then she relaxes and then allows them to come in and feed at a
Mm.
more relaxed energy. So from the age of a puppy, they're learning right away that, this physicality, this form of correction is something that a dog's going to tell me when I shouldn't be doing a certain thing. So
Hmm.
the same thing would apply even as dogs are getting older. If Ozzy went up to a dog and tried to take their toy, and that dog didn't want Ozzy to take the toy, it would probably try and do some type of correctional bite at Ozzy. Now, obviously, sometimes dogs can take it too far, and we wouldn't want that type of thing. But the general idea is that if they were communicating amongst each other, that's what they would do. So they already have an understanding of physicality. If you're familiar with Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer, he
Hmm.
introduces that in one way by doing that touch that he does on the side when he like does like the poke on the dog.
Yeah.
So that's adding in that physicality, but he's just doing it with his hand rather than like obviously having like a dog or anything like that. So moving into like the training tools and everything, the training tools that kind of utilize this more physicality are things like the bonker. If you've ever seen like when people roll up a towel and like they bonk the dog like on the head with it if they're like doing something bad, or like
Mm-hmm.
adding like a spray bottle or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's introducing the physicality. And then also prong collar and then e-collar. So we prefer to use e-collar for a few reasons over like prong collar or any of the other tools. Um, and the reason being is that I'll go over a little bit of, why prong collar works and then why we decide not to choose it. So the
I'm sorry,
prong
what is
collar
an
is
e-collar?
e-collar is it's an electronic collar. It's a type of collar that we use. The technology that's on it is the same as, have you ever been to a physical therapist's office?
Uh-huh.
Have they ever put the patches on you to do the muscle stimulation?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so it's the same technology as that. It has like the same contact like probes there, and then you put it on the dog's neck and it stimulates the muscle in the local area. And then you have a remote that you can go up and down the same way as in a physical therapist's office where they ask you, is this too little? And you're like, yeah, you can turn it up, that's fine. And then you might say, okay, this is too much. They turn it down. It's the same idea when we get into the e-collar with the dogs. And then that's what the sensation is. Um, the reason why that we prefer to use that is because as opposed to something like prong collar, where prong collar is, yes, trying to mimic a dog bite with that physicality, but one, it can be very inconsistent between whoever's using it. So if you're on the prong collar trying to pull Ozzie or something, that might be different than the way your husband pulls Ozzie or the way that a different trainer pulls him. So he's starting to learn different rules for different people. And like, even for example, if your son, were to start walking him, it's going to be very different than if you're walking him. So we don't really like that inconsistency there. We like to have something that's reliable and it's going to work for everybody. Um, Another thing is that the prong collar is only good at a certain distance. So if you want Ozzy to run around the dog park and do his thing, you no longer have use of the prong collar because you're just not there to be able to like use it or have a leash on him like that. So that's another kind of downside is that, yeah, it's good for walking, but that's pretty much it. And then um, lastly, sometimes the prong collar can be a little bit too confrontational when it doesn't have to be that way. So, for example, with the prong collar on, Ozzy can probably easily tell just like he sees the leash going from him, and then he goes to mom or whoever is holding him at the time, and then he can make that connection very easy. And then it makes the training a little bit more messy because now there's a lot of confrontation there. Um, on the flip side, using the e-collar, you have that consistency because whatever number the e-collar is at, for example, our e-collars go from 0 to 127. Um, that in comparison to like maybe other ones that you might find on like Amazon or something, um, that go through like 1 through 10, their 10 is the same as our 127. We just have a larger gradient in between to be able to find exactly, what's working for Ozzy, what's not working for him. But let's say, 50 is too much, 40 is too low, but we find that 43 is like the perfect number for him. Now, 43 for you is going to be the same for your husband, another family member, your child if he walks him. For us here, at like if we're training him, it's all going to be the same. So he should not learn separate rules for separate people. It's just okay. Whenever mom tells me to lay down, I have to lay down, and whenever so and so tells me to lay down, I also have to lay down. It is what it is. Um, and then with the distance, since it's obviously electronic and like wireless and all that, you now have the ability to have that recall when he's running around doing his thing, or maybe it's an emergency situation. Something scares him and you accidentally drop the leash and he's running. Well, now at least we have the e-collar there to be able to make a reliable recall happen if he's too scared by something or just got overwhelmed and now he's running. So there's a higher degree of reliability towards for using it even if you're not going to be super intense with like all the commands, we still at the very least like it for like the walking and then that recall whenever there could be a possible emergency. Another thing that owners often worry about as well is how is this going to affect the relationship between me and my dog? What we would say to that is realistically, there should be no effect between you guys just because Ozzie's not able to understand like the way that the e-collar is working because there's no leash there to see what's happening. He more thinks that it's kind of a silly analogy, but like that it's the universe telling him he shouldn't have done a certain thing. So
Hmm.
if he goes over and he starts barking at the TV, and then we do a correction with the e-collar, and he's like, oh, I'm going to stop barking at the TV. He's not thinking, Mom told me to stop barking at the TV. He's just thinking, well, when I bark at the TV, something happens. I don't really like when that happens, so I'm not going to bark at the TV anymore. So
Hmm.
now there's not that confrontation between you or your son or
Hmm.
whoever. Um, any questions so far? I
No,
know I
that
said a lot
sounds
of.
good. No, and actually, I should say you know, so two things. We did actually, that's how I found you guys. So at our last vet appointment, I was like, okay, we need some help here. We did add gabapentin that we're
Mhm,
giving him twice a day. I feel like it, maybe made a little bit of a difference. Actually, we were at my parents, my husband's parents for a week over Christmas, and he was better there than he was at home a little bit, which was
mhm,
interesting. But then actually, so we were definitely ready for the e-collar. We did get him. My husband found something probably like you said on Amazon, like it's I don't even know. It like makes a noise. Anyways,
okay,
it's not really working.
yeah,
um, but I think yeah, no, it all makes sense, and I think we're definitely on board with with that to aid
mhm,
in the training.
yeah, so he was probably better at, you said it was your parents' house? He was probably
My
better there
husband's
just.
parents, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Just because he was now in a different environment, so he was probably a little bit more like, I'm not sure, what the rules are here or what's going on here.
Hmm.
So, whereas at home he's obviously comfortable, so he's like, if I want a piece of food, I'm gonna go try and take a piece of food.
Yeah.
So that was most likely something where he was like unsure of himself again. Um, and then as far as the noise as like a correction, that can work, but the problem is, as I'm sure you're running into now, um, once he starts to understand that the noise is like that's it, there's nothing more to it, then he's gonna understand that like, okay, it's just a noise, like nothing's really happening.
Gonna go away. Yeah.
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 So that's why adding in that more physicality to it creates like a higher consequence. So then he's taking it seriously. So, for
Hmm.
example, we could make that noise very effective if there was like physicality added in with it, to where he's like, okay,
Hmm.
now if I don't listen to this noise, now there's an actual like physical correction going to happen. So this noise now means a lot to me because it's my warning.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's where just like making things more serious for him so that he understands like, okay, this is something I don't want, so I'll actually listen now.
Hmm.
Um, but any questions about the e-collar, like specifically, or the way that it works, or the use of it, or anything like that so far?
No, that sounds good.
Okay. So moving into the training with it, the way that I would think about it is that we use treats and food and everything like that to tell the dog like when we like something. And now I would just view it as the e-collar is our way of telling him no, we don't like something. So now you can
Hmm.
balance it out where it's like, okay, I like what you're doing here, treats. I don't like what you're doing here, so he's the e-collar. Um,
Hmm.
one thing that owners ask is, when do I have to have it on, and how does that work long term? Our
Yeah.
answer is, when you're outside, I always recommend to have it on, even if you're not planning on using it at all. The only reason being is that, let's say you're not doing any commands or anything, but as I brought up earlier, an emergency situation happens. Maybe it's the 4th of July and a firework goes off and scares him. Well, now you have a reliable way to make that recall happen. If he's too scared when you go to say, Ozzie, come, and he doesn't respond to you, well, now we have the e-collar on him. so we can make the command important enough to him with the higher consequence. So then he's like, okay, it's actually way better if I just turn around and go back to mom.
Mhm.
So I always like to have it on, even for my dog when I'm outside, even though, like, let's say half the time I don't even plan on doing anything. It's always nice to just have it there as like a precaution. Um, as far as having it on inside, the simple rule of thumb answer is just it's on when you need it. So if you guys are sitting at home just watching a movie all together, he's laying down, there's obviously no need to have the e-collar on because everything's chill, there's nothing happening, you're just enjoying the time. But let's say you're going to have company over and you know that he's going to freak out when they come into the door, then what we would recommend is throwing the e-collar on him maybe like 20, 30 minutes beforehand, and then address whatever excitement you need to address. And then when things have settled down, you can just go ahead and take it off.
Okay.
And then after repeating this behavior so consistently, then the goal would just be that he just kind of understands, like, okay, every time I go to the door, if I freak out, e-car happens. I'm just gonna let people come in. I don't care right now.
Mhm.
And then that would be the goal behind that.
So do you see
Um,
with some dogs, like like you said, they can definitely like kind of go through the training, the e-collar, and then not need it long term?
yeah, it depends on the dog really, because at the end of the day, they're always going to be very opportunistic animals. So if they have a way to like get more of what they want, they're going to try and get more of what they want. But that being said, there's many cases where the training has just been very consistent for the dog and the owners are really on top of the dog. So then they're just understanding, like, this happens like 99% of the time, so I'm not going to take my chance here. I don't want to gamble it. Because
Mhm.
if you're inconsistent with it, then that's how you're going to get a dog who's going to take that risk and try and like gamble their chances of like, yesterday I went up to the table and I got a piece of food. The day before that I didn't. I'm willing to try it for today. So if you're consistent with it and keep everything the same for him, then it paints a very clear picture to him that, like, well, it's not worth me trying it because every time I do it, it's the e-collar and I get no food.
Mhm.
So it really just depends on how consistent you guys are with it and what kind of boundaries you're setting with it and everything like that. As far as the barking, that's a very straightforward fix. Um, it would just come down to whether you're looking for more of what we would call like elimination of the behavior, like, okay, no more barking inside the house, or if you're looking for more control, where it's a little bit of barking, but when I tell you to stop, you just have to stop.
Mhm.
So which one are you more like kind of going for with him?
I mean, the thought of no barking sounds pretty great, which is very different than what we have right now. But I don't even
Uh-huh.
know. I mean, I he is like I'm not sure actually. I mean, there's part of me is kind of like, I don't mind appropriate barking, but I want him to
Mhm.
know when he can't bark. So, I mean, I'm probably fine with that. If whatever,
Yeah,
probably whatever one is easier or
yeah.
like has better results. I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, some people like a little bit of barking for the security of it. Just if there's a
Hmm.
noise outside, he barks a little bit, and then it is what it is. Um, you don't necessarily have to make a choice on that for now, but I'll
Yeah.
just run you down what that would look like. Where so if we're wanting to have him bark a little bit, so we let him know, like, you can bark, but now there's just like a cutoff word basically.
Hmm.
So what we would be doing then is the more control side of things, where let's say he hears a noise outside, he starts barking, then we would, allow him to bark. There's no consequence or anything right away. Like, we're fine with that. But now maybe he's been barking for too long and you want him to stop. So then you would add in a cue word as far as, like, stop, quiet, at the facility for a correction. Sometimes we do like the shh noise, um,
Hmm.
anything like that. And that's basically like his warning. So now he should know that, okay, once mom says stop, right after that, then we would follow up with the consequence of the e-collar if he keeps going. So now we're
Hmm.
giving that word a lot of meaning to him, because now he knows, if I keep barking past when I hear this word, then the e-collar happens. I don't want that to happen, but I can bark until I hear this word. And then he starts to understand, okay, like I'll bark a little bit. Mom says quiet. I'm done barking.
Mhm.
And that's the way that the more control side of things would work, where
Mhm.
we're not telling him he can't ever do that. We just are telling him, well, now you have to stop doing
Mhm.
it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. And actually I think I kind of like that. I mean, it is nice just again with like a child, like if he
Mhm.
goes to the door and is trying to get out, that he's, you know, allowed to, signal us that,
Mhm.
something is, amiss or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that usually, is the style that most people go with, just because, like, for the added security, they like to just know it's kind of part of having a dog. Usually people are fine with it.
Hmm.
Um, so that's very straightforward, not a difficult thing to start, adding in at all. Um, and then for the like the more manner side of things, um, as far as like people coming in, him getting super excited, or him like going to the table and doing all this extra stuff. For that, we would probably want to be more strict on it, just because um, we don't want to give him a lot of gray area with things.
Hmm.
So I kind of touched on it earlier when I brought up, like, if things are inconsistent, they're going to want to take chances. Dogs don't do very well with gray area. They do really well with very black and white things. So it's either, on or off. And then it's going to make a lot more sense to them than if it's, okay, sometimes, and then sometimes this, maybe you can do this if this is happening. That's going to be very confusing for him. So the way that I would think about working on those extra manners would be more of like a discipline thing, less of an obedience thing. So obedience sometimes people will use to like address like the going to the table for food, um, barking at the door when people are coming in, managing the excitement. But that's only really a band-aid fix for the moment, just the same as like kind of giving those bones are. Where if he has a really good like down command, yeah, he might stay laying down and not go over to what we don't want him to go over by, but he still has it in his head. I really want to go over by that. I really want to bark at that. So for the more kind of rounded solution to get at the root of the problem, we would want to look at it as more of a behavior thing rather than obedience. So an analogy to like separate it would be obedience. I would view as the stuff that you learn in school, like math, science, reading, all that stuff. Whereas behavior would be the stuff like morality, like don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. So for those extra behaviors, we wouldn't be implementing any commands. It would just be, these are just things you shouldn't be doing. So you shouldn't be going up to the table and trying to get food or begging for food. So there's not necessarily a command for that. We would just implement the consequence because, all right, now you're coming up to the table and begging. That's something we don't want. Now the consequence happens. So then right away he's thinking, I'm not going to go to the table for food anymore because something that I don't like happens when I go to the table. So I'm going to go away from there.
Hmm.
Same thing for uh, doing any like protectiveness or guarding or anything. If we don't want that, then it's not a command. It's just we're addressing it outright to let them know this is just something you don't do.
Hmm.
Um, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so I think that goes over most of the main issues. As far as just to add in, with the recall, that's something that uh, the goal would be to show you how to do the recall and then have it worked up to that off leash recall, so you have it in those emergency situations, especially. Um, and that's like a kind of base command that's going to be a part of whatever you end up doing, just
Hmm.
because of how useful and how important that is. Um, did you have any like specific goals as far as what you think life would look like with Ozzy after training?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think, just obviously we love our dogs so much, and
Hmm.
your life has, different chapters. And I feel like we're just in the chapter where we're, like, you just have guilt for like yelling at him, or, it's like the
Hmm.
definition of insanity. It's like you keep doing the same thing over and over. And it's like,
Hmm.
we just know we're kind of stuck. So I just, life after this, I just want, just more positive interactions where we're, just together, and that like the stress is lower.
Hmm.
And yeah, where I just, there's so many wonderful moments with him, but there's, again, all the things we touched on, those all happen several times throughout the day. So every day is kind of,
Hmm.
peppered with these like, stressful moments. So I just really look forward to like just having more, kind of calm and consistency, and that he knows like, we're in charge, and his
Hmm.
anxiety can be lower, and he knows what to expect, and we know what we're supposed to do. And
Hmm.
I think that's, yeah, that we're looking forward to that.
Okay. Yeah. And a lot of the training, like as a side thing, would also be like one big thing that happens with like every dog with the program is that adding in the structure does something very important where it gives them that ability to have that off switch. So
Yeah.
we'll hear tons of stories where dogs come in and the owners are like, I walk them like 4 times a day. I do all this stuff with them. They're not like, they just won't settle down. I don't know what it is. Like they're
Yeah.
tired, but they're just always doing something. Um, what it comes down to is getting that mental kind of exercise. So like the physical exercise is
Yeah.
one thing, but for example, when you start doing the heel walk with Ozzie, it's going to be for him a different kind of work because now he's not only just walking, he's got a lot to do in
Hmm.
his head. So usually what we end up seeing is that owners are like, wow, my dog has never been this tired before. They just went home and now they're asleep.
Mm.
So adding in that mental exercise to let him
Yeah.
learn how to relax is going to be a big deal for achieving what you're looking for as far as having that chilled out mode inside the house. But when we're outside the house, you could play, do your thing. But it can be hard for dogs sometimes to learn how to have that off switch. Um,
Hmm.
so that's something that will be, um, I guess, achieved or worked towards with the training as well. Um, okay, so
Okay.
did you um, have any specific idea or plan for which program you were looking at, or what seemed more favorable
Not
to you?
really. When I talked to, no, that's a good question. I mean, I looked kind of online,
Uh,
and just was kind of like, huh, I don't know which would be best. And then she said obviously I could schedule with you, and then you would, you know and this has been super helpful. But she
mhm,
said, just if we do the consultation with you doesn't necessarily mean we have to do that type of training. But I don't know. I mean, a couple of things come to mind. I mean, one is, obviously we have a son and busy lives, and we had some health stuff, in the last couple of years.
mhm,
So part of it is just being, realistic. Like, what's going to set us up for success is like
mhm,
being in our home training with him easier than having to like, go to classes outside the home, or even the boarding. I don't know. I'm really
mhm,
open to kind of hearing what you think based on our, um, based on what we're trying to achieve, and based on like, what's kind of the, I don't know, I don't want to say easiest, like we're not willing to put in the work, but just kind of, what's going to streamline this, I guess.
mhm. I would say overall, whenever there's especially some more behavioral issues that are needing to be taken care of, the in person is always going to be the best program.
Hmm.
So whether that's in person in the home or in person at the facility is they're both going to give you the best experience as far as you being right there, learning how to handle Ozzy in the moment, seeing everything happen. You're the ones actually doing it. So it'll give you the most like
Hmm.
hands-on approach to it, especially with the behavior stuff. And then definitely doing some at least some of the classes in home, because some of your issues are very specific to
Yeah.
the home, would be the most helpful, I would say. As far as doing some type of board and train or daycare and train, I would say that we can do that only because with those programs, you get in-person follow-up hours, which you can also turn into like in-home sessions. So it's not that you would be missing out on any of that. It's more that we would be doing a lot of the work on the front end here and then transferring everything to you. So you wouldn't necessarily be getting that immediate hands-on approach. Not to say it still won't be successful, but it's definitely going to be, I would say, like a step down from the in-person program.
Yeah. I feel
Um,
like in person, I feel like we need to kind of like, you know, take charge of this and like learn,
mhm,
how to handle this. And especially, yeah, I mean, I feel like that is probably, just and to kind of have that connection with him and like
mhm,
us to really learn and yeah, to that seems to make sense to me. And then, I think, I'd be willing to come occasionally, to the facility, but I think probably, some definitely in home at like at our house makes a lot of
mhm.
sense just for convenience and also just to kind of see like what it's like in our environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that because if you do in person, you could technically make all of them in home, and like you could do like heal like by your house and everything like that.
Hmm.
So it's not even necessarily that you would have to come here. It's just if people are usually doing the in-person program, they'll do most of the obedience stuff here, and then they'll kind of do the more behavior stuff at home, like
Mm-hmm.
separate in-person sessions. But however you would want to set that up is more up to you. I would just at least definitely recommend probably at least two in-home sessions just to make
Uh-huh.
sure that you can cover everything there. As far as the length of the program, I would say at minimum I would stick to 6 weeks.
Hmm.
So it goes 3, 6, 9, 12. Um, 3, I feel like would just be too little time just because you'll be able to get some of your basic obedience with heal and recall, but that's not giving you enough time to do any of the in-home stuff.
Hmm.
And then 6 is going to be 2 classes for heal, 1 class for recall, and then the 3 classes to possibly 2 of them work on stuff in the home, and then that third one for anything else you might want to do, or you can save it.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
no, I think 6 is probably a great starting point and could figure it all out, or if we needed more, we'd be willing to do that too.
mhm,
Also just curious, like, it's my husband and I mean, I would probably be the one um, you know, doing most of like the classes, but is it important for him to like do a couple to like, or is it is it kind of up to us if I want to like share with him what I've learned and like kind of show my husband, or should he be involved too?
that's up to you guys. Obviously, if he's there, it's a little bit more direct for him.
Hmm.
But if he's not there, you'll still be getting all the information. The classes will still be recorded, so he could even watch them
Okay.
back, and you can show him yourself because, like I said, it's very easily transferable. So
Hmm.
whatever you're doing with Ozzy, if he's doing the same thing, it's the same rules for Ozzy.
Okay.
Um, so it's not necessary. It's really just up to you guys. Like if one day he can't make it out, it's not going to set back the training or anything like that.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. No, that
Mhm.
sounds good.
And then
And
as
Elias, I'm
far,
sorry,
yeah,
Elias,
go
do
ahead.
you do the boarding or do you do the in person?
I do the board and train and daycare and train, and Enrique
Okay.
and Jesse do the in person.
Okay.
So I would probably recommend Enrique for the in person
Hmm.
for Ozzy, just because one, it's a little bit cheaper, so that's nicer. And then two, this is something that Enrique would be very comfortable dealing with. He's had a lot of experience with this, and it should be pretty easy and straightforward within the 6 week program for him to get whatever you guys need out of the program, basically.
Okay. Sounds good.
Um, and then as far as the e-collar, um, how I can't remember. Did you say his weight earlier or like how big he
He
is?
is, yeah, he's like, what is he? I'm trying to think when he went to the vet. He's under 20 pounds.
Okay. Okay.
I could get a more
Um,
exact weight, but I feel like he's like 18 maybe.
mhm. Okay. I would probably recommend for now, unless, as you go through the training, if there needs to be a collar switch that can happen. But for right now, and then you don't have to remember this as well. This will all be included in an email.
Okay.
Um, I would probably say the 2300, the dog Tour 2300. That's kind of our like middle collar, just because he's like a smaller guy, but at the same time, it seems like he's got a lot of personality to him. So I don't want to put him on the smallest one because I feel like then you guys will always be like maxing it out. He wouldn't really feel it at
Mhm.
all. But then if we can avoid using the higher end one, it's one going to save you guys some money, and then two, if you don't need it, there's no reason to have it. So
Okay.
um, I would recommend that one. And then for that, we are a dog tour retailer. So what we could do is whenever you get your lesson scheduled out, Enrique can just bring it to the lesson with him, and then you guys can get it all set up there. Or you can, buy it on your own beforehand. It's really up to you. Usually the clients find it easier just to have it brought to the first lesson.
Okay.
Um, so that can be figured out as well. And then other than that, I'll include all of this in an email to Enrique's assistant. Um, Her name is Tina. She should be reaching out to you, just pretty much going over everything here, just saying, confirming like this. You can feel free to change up anything you'd like or ask any questions that maybe you forgot to ask in the consultation or anything with scheduling, pricing, anything like that within that email chain. And then she'll be able to answer you for pretty much everything unless it's training specific. And then myself or Enrique can get back to you.
Okay.
Um, and then other than that, any other questions as far as how the program's going to work, the training, anything like that?
No, I think that makes sense. So you'll in the email you said just put like the pricing that you suggest, like the in person 6 weeks and the collar and all that.
hmm
Okay.
Yeah, all the
Yeah.
recommendations will be in the email, and then Tina can go over. If you have to do a payment plan or something, she can run you through all of that very easily through email.
Okay. No, this sounds great. Yeah, no, I found this very helpful. I appreciate your time and glad that
hmm
our vet recommended you guys and just looking forward to getting some steps in the right direction. So this sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah. It does sound good. Let me just make sure that I'm not forgetting anything. Um, no, it all looks good to me. If there's any other information that we need to give you or you need to give us, it'll be within that email chain. Um, but other than that, I will go ahead, send all this out, and then we'll go ahead, get an email chain going, and hopefully get you guys started as soon as possible.
Thank you, Elias. I really appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you guys. And then is your facility in the West Loop now? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Okay, great. Sounds
Okie
good. Well,
dokie.
we're in Bucktown, so that works. And well, yeah,
Nice.
thank you. I look forward to the follow up and appreciate it.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. It was nice talking to you. Have a good one.
Okay. Have a good one. Happy New Year.